Hello! Today we're going to talk about some absolute value. Alright, today we are talking about learning goal number 3, order of operations involving absolute value. Before we get started, I just want to catch up on a few vocabulary words that will be important in today's lesson. A negative number. It's a number less than 0. Positive number. It's a number greater than 0. An integer is any whole number including positive, negative, and 0. So let me give you an example. It's all of the negative numbers down here, and then -2, -1, 0 also, and then also all the positive numbers, 1, 2, and so on. So these dots represent the fact that this set goes on in both directions, and the curly braces here represent that it's a set. So integers are the set of all whole numbers, including the negative ones, 0, and the positive ones. I'll give you a minute right now to copy this down. Still got a few more to go, so let me move on to the next screen here. Inequality. It's a mathematical sentence identifying two quantities are not equal. For example, we often refer to this as less than and this as greater than. So to fully understand it, we'll say -2 is less than 4. -2 being a smaller negative number, 4 being a positive number. The negative number is obviously less than that. Okay? Greater than. 6 is greater than -6. 6 being positive value, -6 being negative value, smaller. This one is greater. Oftentimes we remind ourselves because it's like an alligator mouth opened up towards the bigger value. So the 4 has to be bigger than this -2, and the 6 has to be bigger than this -6. But as I read this, I read it as less than, and as I read this, I read it as greater than. And the best way to be able to relate two numbers using inequality is to be able to understand the number line. So the number line has 0 in the middle, right? And then everything in this direction, or everything less than 0, will be negative. -1, -2, -3 if I use my integers, and then to the right, positive. 1, 2, 3. So as you move down the number line, everything on this side will be less than everything to the right. So for example, 2 is less than 3, and 1 is less than 3, and 0 is less than 3, and so on. All of these values will be less than 3, and this will go on forever. And all of these values to the right will be greater than the ones to the left. Okay, finally, absolute value. It's the distance between a number and 0 on a number line. So to fully understand this, first of all, absolute value is represented by these two straight lines around something. And actually, absolute value acts as a grouping symbol, just like parentheses does. So whatever's inside, you want to simplify that first and get it down to one number, and then take the absolute value of that number. Okay, so for an example, -3. Well, if you look at a number line, 0 in the middle, -3 all the way over here, there's -3 right there. How far is that away from 0? Well, a lot of people will go, oh, -3 units, but actually it's 3 units. Okay, we never measure a distance using a negative number. Distance is never negative. Even if you dig a 5-foot hole, it's still 5 feet deep because it's 1, 2, 3 units away from 0. Okay, on the other side, let's say +3. Okay, the absolute value of +3, it's also 3 because it's 1, 2, 3 units away from 0. Absolute value asks you how far a number is away from 0 on a number line. It measures distance, and distance is always positive. So basically, very important, absolute value always produces a positive value. Meaning, if you take the absolute value of a negative number or the absolute value of a positive number, you should always get a positive answer because it represents the distance between two things, and distance is always positive. All right, now let's look at some problems. Okay, so this problem here has two absolute values within it, and we're going to follow order of operations. You recall, order of operations is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or PEMDAS for short. Stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, and addition, subtraction. Okay? So as I look at this, what you need to understand is that these absolute value symbols here and here, they act as parentheses. They are acting as grouping symbols. So I take a look at this absolute value, 6 minus 3. 6 is being subtracted by 3. So I do that problem inside of that first. 6 minus 3 is 3. And the absolute value symbols remain. And then minus, that negative does not change anything else. Negatives do not go inside or come outside of any absolute values. 2 minus 4. If I take 2 and subtract 4 from it, I will get negative 2. And I still have the absolute value of that. So now I have actually done what is inside parentheses. So what I have to do is I have to use the actual absolute value now. Absolute value is an operation in itself. It doubles as a grouping symbol and as an operation. So for example here, the absolute value of 3 is 3. And then this minus will come down. And the absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. So now I've taken the absolute value of these two, and I can continue on with the order of operations. There's no exponents, there's no multiplication division, there's no addition, but there is subtraction right here. 3 minus 2 is 1. And that's my final answer. Let me recap real quick. These two absolute value symbols acted as grouping symbols, like parentheses do. So what I do is I simplify inside. 6 minus 3 is 3. 2 minus 4, negative 2. Then after I've done that, they are actually operations. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, but this subtraction came straight down. This absolute value does not affect that subtraction. And then from there, 3 minus 2, 1 is my final answer. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, so now this next example is actually an algebraic expression. So what I need to do is I need to substitute in the values to make it numerical and then go from there. We have 6 times the absolute value of x plus y. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite it, but in place of x I'll put negative 8, and in place of y I'll put 9. So x is negative 8. I'll plug that in here. Just use a set of parentheses so I can easily see where x is, plus, and my y value was 9. Okay, so now what do I need to do? Well, parentheses. But I see a set of absolute value here, which act as parentheses, grouping symbols, but there are no operations happening inside. But I still need to take the absolute value of negative 8. And the absolute value of negative 8 is positive 8. So I have this 6 out front, and I have a positive 8. Those two are going to be multiplied. But the absolute value of negative 8 was positive 8, and I need to write that before I move on. And then I have this plus 9. So I did the absolute value. Now I have to continue on, order of operations. I have multiplication here. 6 times 8, 48, plus 9. And then I can do addition. 48 plus 9, 57 is my answer. Notice how I didn't take this 6 and multiply it inside the absolute value. You never distribute inside the absolute value. You never take anything inside the absolute value. You simplify inside first, and then you take the absolute value of that number before you try to do anything else with it. Never try to add anything in, or move any signs to the inside, or distribute anything in. It's a big rule with absolute values. Simplify inside, take the absolute value, and move on. Okay, that's all I have for you right now. Hopefully you got the absolute value. Let's give it a little try with these few problems right now.